In this video, I'd like to introduce you to some tips and tricks I use to make better photographs with the Sony A6100. The camera will give you fine photos if you simply use the factory defaults, but it also offers you ways to improve your pictures in camera with some pretty cool settings few photographers use. These settings make the camera see things differently, and making the camera see things differently will help you see differently yourself and develop your vision as a photographer. Once you become aware of these settings, you'll be able to envision your photographs in a whole new way before you take them. So let's move on to the first trick in tips and tricks for the Sony A6100. It might be difficult to believe some of the photographs taken with the watercolor setting under picture effects are photographs at all. They seem like watercolor paintings. In the early days of photography, there was a movement in the 19th and 20th century for photographs to look like artists' renderings. It was called Pictorialism, and it did its best to emulate the great painters and their visions of the world, insisting that photography should project an emotional impact on the viewer. The great Ansel Adams killed off this movement with his insistence that photography was an art form in itself. To him, there was no need for photographs to imitate painting, and he elevated pure photography into an art form. With the advent of advanced digital photography, you can take a step toward pictorialism, but with color instead of black and white. When I got the Sony A6000, I was anxious to see how the two kit lenses worked for macro photography. I know the larger 55 to 210 would close focus at about 3 feet 4 inches, and that the smaller 16 to 50 kit lens would focus at about 30 inches, I think it is. Anyway, it's somewhere around there. I was a little disappointed, so I thought I might turn to this RAYNOX Super Macro Conversion Lens and see if I could put that on these two lenses and get some macro photography out of them that way. So I tried. It didn't work. Didn't work on that, and it didn't work on the 50 millimeter lens, the f1.8. So I was a little bit at a loss to see how I could get some real macro photography done, but then I had an idea. I really pulled this one out of nowhere, but I put on a lens hood backwards, and voila. The RAYNOX fit on there snugly, and I got some nice photos. I tried it again. Oh, let's see. Oh, yeah. With the 50mm lens. Whoops. I put it on backwards. Lens hood. And the same thing happens. I could get some pretty good macro shots that way. I tried with the 16 to 50 lens, but that didn't work at all. There was no way I could turn this hood around, and it just wouldn't fit on there. So that's what I did. That's one little trick I came up with that allowed me to shoot macro. I'll show you. As mentioned earlier, Ansel Adams elevated photography to an art form, and he used black and white photography to do so. He was not innocent of manipulation in his pictures, and he admitted that his work in the darkroom was an important part of his art. He also used red filters to bring out contrast and detail in his black and white photographs. It helped produce the dark skies and detailed surfaces of his great mountain artworks. That being said, to me and many others, modern digital black and white photography often lacks pop and drama, the kind of pop and drama at which Adams excelled. I think with a few of the tips and tricks that follow, you can emulate Adams in a small way and rectify some of the banality of modern monochrome pictures. Let's see what tips and tricks with the Sony A6100 can do that. Now that we've talked about Ansel Adams killing off pictorialism and the Sony A6100 reviving it, let's try to revive the old movement with this camera and its inborn tricks. Pictorialism depended on soft focus, unusual situations, and quaint views and compositions from the photographer and the manipulation of the monochrome media in the darkroom. We can try these things with the A6100. Let's see if we can remove the stake from the heart of pictorialism with this modern camera.